We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And we're back with Scott D'Accenta, Liberty Nation's legal affairs editor and host of the most excellent Uprising podcast that you can find at all good podcast providers. Now, earlier in the show, we talked Hunter Biden skipping his subpoenaed deposition, compelled deposition. But now I want to talk about something that's happening towards the Supreme Court, and that is special prosecutor in the case against Donald Trump for trying to overturn the 2020 election is seeking aid and comfort from the Supreme Court because he won a case. Explain that one to me, Scott.
Yeah, so we have to get our playbooks out and identify specifically, this is the D.C. federal criminal trial for Donald Trump. In that case, Donald Trump says, I can't be charged with these crimes for two reasons. One is I was president of the United States when I took these actions, and therefore I'm immune from prosecution for acting against the interest of president of the United States because I was, or excuse me, the United States, because I was the president and acting as the chief executive officer. That's claim one. Claim two is a double jeopardy claim. And people are aware this is for being tried for the same, well, tried is actually an interesting word there, for being placed, for twice being placed in jeopardy for the same crime. That's what double jeopardy is. And Donald Trump says that the proceedings in the Congress, namely impeachment and then a removal trial.
The Senate trial,
right, constituted that jeopardy. And so therefore he shouldn't have to bear the burden of being again placed in jeopardy for that crime. So Judge Chutkan is the trial judge, the D.C. Circuit, the D.C. District Court judge who was appointed by Barack Hussein Obama. And she ruled that those against Donald Trump on those two arguments. She said, you don't get, you're not going to get the charges tossed on those grounds. And she, put a significant memo out detailing those, why that is. Donald Trump appealed that to the the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, which is the proper, every district judge basically sits underneath an appeals court judge. And so appeals from those courts flow like a funnel up into that. And then the next stop would be the Supreme Court. And what the Supreme Court did, which was ultra rare, is take that case before it got to the DC
let's just
Court.
be clarified.
Hold on a second. I'm going to get through it. It took the case before it got to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals on a motion by the special prosecutor. The special prosecutor,
Jack Smith.
Trump loses his motions. He appeals to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. Jack Smith says to the Supreme Court, hey, we can't wait around for the appeals court to do their job. And also, no matter what they say, you're going to have to be the ultimate decider of this case. So you should reach down and accept this case for argument. And that's what they did.
Okay, so the Supreme Court will be the final arbiters of whether this particular motion to claim immunity by former President Donald Trump is valid or
not. Two
not.
separate ones, by the way, just for the record. So there are two buckets that he could get out of jail free on, basically. One is the double jeopardy bucket, and one is the acts as president bucket.
Yeah, that's pretty. It's pretty fascinating. So I don't think it's as cut and dried as people make out, because I'm seeing all this social media chatter, and of course that is the worst place to get your actual solid information. God bless Elon Musk, but just for his efforts in making it a place there. But you've got all this noise out there saying, hey, this can't be right, that President Trump can be pardoned for crimes because he is a president. That means that he could just kill everybody and make himself a dictator, which is a terrible analysis, but it's one that you would think that previously serious people are grabbing onto. Could you tell me why they're desperately wrong in this matter?
Murder is not a job duty or you know what? It's funny because
it's not the role of. I mean, I know what the answer is, Scott. I've pretty much got it, I think. That is that the job of the executive is to enforce the will of the executive under the auspices of being the executive. Now, if Donald Trump were trying to, I don't know, to buy some illegal DVDs, that's not part of his job. I think I have a way
of, I think I have a way of presenting it that I think it'd be helpful for the audience, Mark, which is that if you take it away from politics and we just make it a company, let's make it the Coca-Cola company, okay?
Yep.
And if the CEO of Coca-Cola can shut down a bottling plant, he can start a new bottling plant. Maybe they can start a new recipe to some new diet fad they want to, with some new sweetener. They can do those sorts of things. But they probably can't open up a chain of TV repair shops, because
Sure.
it doesn't kind of make any sense that that would be part of the business, especially if it was a very considerable investment. The executive is charged with doing the normal operating of the business, and things that are way outside that operation generally require some extra permissions, basically, not part of the normal thing. And so if Donald Trump walked out on South Capitol or the Pennsylvania Avenue and started shooting people, that's entirely different than making phone calls saying, we should do X, Y, or Z to advance my chances of being the next president.
Yeah, I think that's a great assessment, Scott. Thank you for clearing that up, from saving me from the clutches of internet idiocy. Now, this brings us onto another question. Of course, the Supreme Court will be determining whether Donald Trump's claims are constitutional within the law, and then they'll send that decision back down. Now, Senate Judiciary Chairman Dick Durbin, just the other day, after Jack Smith asked the Supreme Court to hear this, he said, I've got this quote here: "There are so many unanswered questions about the relationship of the justice," talking about Justice Clarence Thomas, "and his family with the Trump administration, that I think in the interests of justice, he should recuse himself." There you go. Yeah. So right. Already,
by the way, probably all the justices that Trump appointed, I'm guessing from the chairman's perspective, might want to recuse themselves too. So Gorsuch and Barrett. Then you just get Sotomayor. Matter of fact, we should just have Sotomayor and Kagan and Ketanji Brown Jackson. So yeah, the three of them. I'm sure that's what Dick Durbin would.
I'm sure that they'd allow Chief Justice John Roberts to sit in there as well, just because, right?
This is where the years or year plus of kind of nuclear level attacks on Justice Thomas's reputation, I think, may pay a dividend, or some other justice. I was talking to somebody the other day about this case, and the pressures come from all over. So meaning, these justices have people screaming and shouting from bullhorns outside their houses. You have to remember, it's not just on Twitter where these arguments live.
Well, the guy turning up at Justice Kavanaugh's house, ready to do damage and harm as well.
Oh, well, he a murderer, except for lack of skill, to be sure. But even outside of that, Justice Barrett's children's school was picketed. Why? Why is that an appropriate place, to express your dissatisfaction with a justice?
But the Supreme Court will eventually come down this one way or the other. And I think we're going to see some major fireworks, regardless of what that decision is. Scott, final word.
Well, Trump hasn't responded yet to the Smith request for the Supreme Court hearing, so we'll have to read his brief. But I suspect the arguments won't change much. And I expect to be disappointed, as in always, with our Supreme Court, and I suggest everyone else expect that too. And
regardless of which side you want to win.
Will be met. Indeed.
Scott DeCosenza, thank you ever so much.
Cheers. Thanks, Mark.
And that's about all we have time for on this week's edition of Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I've been your host, Mark Angelides. My special thanks to Tim Donner and Scott DeCosenza for joining us today. And also my thanks to you, the listeners at home, for taking the time to tune in and week out. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next week. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Don't get caught up in the media madness. Join our movement for free thinking and free speech at libertynation.com. Publishing news and analysis 24/7 with original articles by our team of authors who tell it like it is. Join us each week for online TV shows, The Uprising Podcast, and Liberty Nation Radio. We believe in free thinking and free speech. We are libertynation.com.